Dice are rolling, darkness falls. Inside the GM Studios halls. Tabletop games where nightmares creep. In a realm where sanity is lost and weak. Welcome to the abyss where dreams shatter. Inside the GM studio, nothing else matters. Blood and chaos, the dark arts unfold. In the realm of role-playing, where legends are told.
How are we doing this week out there, gang? Welcome to the side question episode of Inside the GM Studio, where me and my co-host field questions from the internet. In case you're just joining us for the first time, my name is David.
I'm Matt.
And I'm going to roll a d20 because if you're listening to this, you know what it is. So I'm going to roll it. I'm going to tell Matt the number, which is a 9 this week, and we're going to get a question. And we're going to try to scrub this week's topic from our mind.
All right. This one comes from Lord, Me, Myself, and I on our Ask Game Masters with the title, I need advice on how to start a one-shot, please. I don't mean like start in a tavern. I literally mean how to start. Like, what's the first thing I should say? I've been trying to set the scene for and here he spelled it bussy, a busy city near the sea, but I can, for the life of me, not think of a first sentence. It just sounds like I'm trying to make a tourism ad for the city. Any advice is appreciated.
Wow, okay. Succinct and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Also, probably something that every GM has struggled with at some point. From what I can tell, there's basically two kind of broad schools. I fall into the first school, which is I'm a fan of writing just flavor text to start off an adventure. It sets the tone, gives the players kind of some understanding of the stakes of the adventure, where it takes place, how they got to the current state of affairs. It just sets the table nicely. The other school is likely to just kind of start firing from the hip. This is easier if you start in media res. If you just decide that the adventure is kind of already underway, and you just start by saying you're in something like you're in the throes of a dungeon looking for a lost artifact, and you just breach the door and you're facing off against a horde of goblins and like roll initiative, right? Like that's really easy to do there. If you're not going to do that, then you can probably just take a few pillar concepts for the start of an adventure or the start of a campaign in general, but it sounds like it's a one shot. So what you want to do is do the same thing that you would do in flavor text, but probably just not quite as artfully. That's why I like to kind of tinker with what I'm going to say by just writing it out. And sure, it seems a little canned, but if you're going to just be kind of going on the fly with your descriptions, that flavor text goes a long way to set the mood and stuff. But generally, you want to just communicate the purpose of what is supposed to happen in the adventure, the stakes of the adventure, what the characters stand to gain and lose, their reasoning for wanting that. Hopefully, a little bit of the state of affairs prior to their entrance in the narrative. Someone is employing them to go on a fetch quest or something. Why do they want them? Why do they want the PCs to do this? What are the stakes and what are the whatever? Beyond that, you probably want to contextualize a little bit for the players for purposes of mood and atmosphere, where the adventure takes place, at least in a broad sense. It doesn't need to be a specific city, but, are they on the open steppes of a vast desert? Are they in the throes of some marsh Are they in a hilly region with some kingdom in a valley in a cave with monsters? Like, just give them an idea at least of what the overall texture of the environment is, and then just try to give them a little bit of insight into why this might matter to their characters. That'll depend on if it's a one shot, they probably don't need a ton of motivation other than
Mm-hmm.
adventure is afoot
Yep.
and they want some treasure and they want some glory. That's a good enough motivation for most adventurers. But if you're going to weave in a little bit more, maybe if the characters all have individual side quest goals or something throughout the narrative, um, then try to weave those in. You want to think of the opening things that you say at the beginning of an adventure. You are going to basically be forecasting what's likely to happen, even if you don't give away precisely where the plot is going. The players should come away with understanding what they are to do and what is the likely outcome, for better or worse. So prepare yourself to talk a decent amount at the beginning of the adventure. Again, if you just start in media res, where you're just throwing them into the action, you might need to give that little bit of exposition a little bit later, not right at the beginning. But that's probably the easiest way to just kind of get right into the meat of the adventure. And then you contextualize as like a backfill, in which case that's not the first thing that you're saying.
Mm.
Um,
I've actually used this a couple times while doing one shots.
mm,
Start right into the action, like you said. You start with the, say, you know, Grandnar, kicks the door in as you stand in front of a group of goblins, blah blah blah, giving this fight scene. Roll for initiative. You go right into the action, and then later
mhm,
on, as soon as they are, because some of these people maybe they're doing a one shot because they're trying to learn the game.
yeah,
Great thing to do right off the bat. Guess what? We just learned combat. Now we can
yep.
get into the game proper. You can actually go into, like David said, you can start going to the meat and potatoes of the actual adventure itself.
Yeah, yeah, because if you start with a moment of, look, when you're starting a campaign, it's fine to start with a moment of low
Mm-hmm,
energy.
mm-hmm,
Characters meet in a tavern, they get an adventure hook, they're traveling down a road, and they arrive in a town. The moments of low energy allow the players to ramp up to high adventure because the campaign is going to be a long one. So there's going to be plenty of road maps or road signposts throughout the adventure. But in a one shot, you might just want to get into the action and then just explain after. Have a moment of um, a high energy scene, a combat scene, a chase, a tense negotiation, a they're sneaking in to steal something or something,
mm-hmm.
and you're doing a bunch of mechanics and rolling and whatever, and the characters just know their immediate goal ahead. There are bad guys in front of me, I have to kill them. And so then you kind of backfill in a moment of low energy as to why they're here and what they're doing, because now they're already invested because they've taken some agency right out of the gate. If they're one shot characters, they likely don't have well fleshed out backstories
Mm-hmm.
and things where their characters have their own motivations and they're going to be seeking these things, and you have a good firm adventure hook where it makes sense for all of the characters and ties into all of their backstories and forecasts the kind of trajectory of the entire campaign. No, it's going to be a short plot arc, with a fairly simplistic conflict, and it's a good way to get people invested in something just by doing, and they won't even realize that you've kind of inceptioned them. It works this way with uh, people doing you favors or you doing favors for people. You don't realize this, but we like people that we do favors for.
Mm-hmm.
And we assume that doing a favor for someone makes someone else like us. It's like, no, it makes you like them. Like, and so you do this is why it's a great thing, like, just to ask for a small favor. If you think you have some sort of tension with someone, just ask them for like a small favor, something as simple as like borrowing a book or giving you a ride or something. And if you do that enough, then it's hard for you to stage in your head that you don't like them, because you're like, well, I don't like that guy. And it's like, and then you think to yourself, well, then why did I do him a favor? And then you go, I must like him. It's like, and the same thing works. You just like put someone in the throes of action. They're fighting these goblins, right? Whereas at the beginning they could be like, well, why would I even be inclined to go like on this fetch quest? This is like a thing for Matt's character. Like Matt's character is nobility, and his we need to recover his family's crest. But why the fuck am I here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there's gold. I'm like, sure, but there's other easier ways to make gold. This seems really dangerous, and it's like you could play that game and certain players might think in that mindset, or you have to hand wave away those motivations. But if you throw them in the mix of like they're fighting a bunch of goblins and then you tell them you're here to like recover this guy, then they go, oh yeah, I must be invested in that.
Yeah.
I must be invested in the narrative because I just fought these goblins. I didn't do that for no reason. And so, and no player is going to be like, oh, you kick down the door and there's a bunch of snarling goblins like guarding a chest that clearly, and you go like, I don't want to care about this. I'm going to leave. Like
Yeah. I
said, no
shut the
player.
door, lock it, and
Yeah.
walk away.
So said no player ever, right? So that's probably the best tactic for a one shot. But um, if you're going to kind of want to set the stakes, then when you write, if you write things out, you can keep it short and sweet. And some of my descriptor texts, I mean, to me seems short, but it amounts to me talking for several minutes at the start of the game. Um, but it also just kind of, if you're thoughtful about it, it ropes the players in and they begin to understand what's at stake and what
Mm.
they need to do.
Mm. $12.05.
Hello?
Yep. I gotta mark this down.
Sorry,
At
I
12
cut out there.
minutes. Yeah, it's fine.
Say when.
Go ahead. I'm just writing it down here.
They can kind of process what it is that you're saying, and then kind of plan out the way they're going to react to it, so that when you hand over that agency to them, like, okay, I'm talking and I'm telling you what's going on in the narrative so far and like why you're invested in what's going on, yada yada yada, and now you have it. It means like now do something. If you give them the proper information, set the scene properly, then they'll be processing and they'll be eager to like do something instead of just being like, I don't know, what are we doing? Like,
Mm.
but if you're, that depends on how much confidence you have in the autonomy of your players, how much you think they want to get into the action. If you think that they're in that category, then start in media res, and by which I mean in the middle of the action, right?
Mhm.
That's what that means. It's at just like at a point where it's like the narrative is already started and just start at the first moment in the plot that has high dramatic stakes. That might it might be a fight, it might be a negotiation, it might be a chase, it might be something that is just the stakes are the first time the players would need to do something that's significant where failure would be bad for the party.
Mm.
If you start there, then you can kind of, wind down and then spike back up, and a couple of down and up spikes like that, and you have yourself a one shot. But if you think that your players might enjoy a slightly more autonomous game where they might want to have a little more control, like let's say the start of the adventure has 3 or 4 options, right? Go to the tower to investigate a missing person, go to the old well to negotiate with the witch that lives there, go to the swamp to recover a missing caravan, right? Oh my God, like these are all 3 options that I could do, and you could start at any one of them and it would be cool. And if your players really revel in the idea of being able to choose, and you think that if you give them the proper setup and information, that they'll go to one
Mhm.
eagerly, then start there. It'll just depend on how um, the sensibilities of your players on that front. But they're both good tactics. It probably just depends on your style and overall style of your GMing and the temperaments of your players. Hopefully, those temperaments are not totally foreign to you, but
Mm.
maybe if you're asking the question as to just flat out how to start, I'm guessing that if you are asking this question that you've never ran a game before, period. So either start with something that's dynamic. The first words out of your mouth should be something action oriented and that communicates stakes. Or if you're going to take the more slow paced approach, the first words out of your mouth should be contextualizing for the players where and why this is happening.
Yep.
And then get into how it's likely to play out and then just hand it over to your players as long as they have an option, as long as you've the information that you've given them has empowered them to be curious about something. That's your goal. To be either immediately invested in action that you put them in the midst of and they can make some choices. Choices are what's key. You're in a battle, you have choices as to what to do as a fight. But if you dump a bunch of exposition, or not a bunch, but you dump exposition on them, they should be curious and be armed with choices as to what to do. And if you're doing that with the first few minutes of your talk out of the gate, then the adventure will get off to a good start.
Yeah. So, how Lord, me, myself, and I was saying that every time that they were trying to think of how to start the one shot, it sounded like a tourism ad.
Hmm.
Coming from a guy that has done a lot of one shots and will continue to do a lot of one shots, like David said, this might be a brand new system that people are coming into. So there's no reason to have them not know each other right off the bat. If it's a long form campaign and you want them to really get to know their characters and express their characters and how they are when they first meet, go for it. I think both David and I have kind of outgrown that. Now we're just like, y'all know each other. It
Yes.
doesn't matter. Or something like this where you wanted to throw them into a one shot and not have it sound like an ad for the city. Just like David said, you've come to this city because you need to connect with this person, or you've come to this city for more information on the tower a few miles to the north where this MacGuffin is that you have to go get. Just lay it out for them right there. It's a one shot. It's nothing that they really have to worry about, that they have to think about real hard. This is something that you're doing for the night to have fun, or it is, you're learning a new system. It's most likely just some pre-generated characters that you've made to get to know the game. So there's no real reason to get too, fragrant with it. Like after you tell them why they are here and what they are doing, sure, then go ahead and get into a little bit of flavor of the city itself, because that's always cool.
There's an important distinction to be made that probably it's been coming up at my writing club a lot, and so it's probably touches on this question a little bit, which is the question of narrator. We get so used to um, when you narrate something for the um, players, it's often what you call second person limited. So you'll say you walk up to the door and can smell that food is cooking on the other side of it, right? I'm saying you, that's second person, as opposed to I would be first person, or like he or she or it would be third person. So I'm saying that you do this, and that's second person limited, which means that you as the player only have the knowledge that the character is experiencing right in front of them. So a good way to give characters information, give players information that the characters have already, is through what's called third person omniscient, which is that they know everything, right? Like a god or something. You can narrate from this perspective without needing to just give details, right? You could say something, sure, that might be a little kind of like touristy ad, but you should weave it in with other things. The sprawling vistas of the city stretch long along the beaches into long coral reefs deep beneath the surface that no one has touched in 1,000 years. That's a descriptor. But you could also give some sort of information like that only a third person omniscient narrator would have. Tensions between local guilds and the gentry have been bubbling up in recent years, causing a lot of strife among the locals, right? Okay, that's like a third person, like the state of affairs. But if the characters exist in this world and they've been in this town, then they would likely know this. You don't need to tell them things that they're limited to perceiving right there in the moment, because a narration at the beginning of a game is kind of info dumping on them. And a third person narrator can give the characters information, give the players information that the characters might not have, and that can set the mood and the tone. But when you're setting the stakes and the like forecast of the way the game is like to go, to try to pick out specific details that matter. Try teasing apart what are the essential components. Then you'll know what you should be communicating. Some of it will be flavor and texture, but just as much of it will be useful in some way. And then that way it won't read like you're just saying like, and then the waves crash over onto the beach,
Yeah.
and the sprawling spires loom overhead great in an azure sky with clouds billowing off. It's like, yeah, that sounds like a tourist ad,
Yeah.
but that's just because it's all visual details. It's not emotional details, and it's not the details that matter about the stakes, the state of affairs. So try to think in those terms and I mean, just even like one than the other, or like, two than one, and, just back and forth, and you just have a couple of paragraphs in mind and send the players off to the races.
I want to get to some of these comments. I was looking over them, and the majority of them is just they just go on and write a couple paragraphs that is an ad for the city. It's exactly what the questioner was not looking for. But some of these are kind of cool. I kind of dig these. Like this one from Klon Style. Jesus, sorry. Which says, I've been there. I'd start by putting the players right in the middle of something instead of describing things like a narrator. Drop them into noise, movement, smells, like if they just broke out of a daydream. Don't introduce the city like a brochure. Just hit them with the detail that they can latch onto for context. Something like the stink of fish hits you at first, and then shouting, boats unloading, carts rattling over cobblestone. Something's chasing a thief down the pier and no one cares. Welcome to Gull's Bay. Then give them a reason to care. Mention who they're supposed to meet, or what they're looking for, or what just went wrong. Let the city show itself through what's happening, not through a static description. This will also help you focus on the slice of the city that's right in front of their eyes, not a vast info dump of a place that descriptions that won't matter right now. I
Yeah,
like that.
I mean,
That's a good idea.
yeah, I mean, so here was like, I mean, I went on longer than this, but here is the opening paragraph of a new saga that I wrote last night. And again, there's more to this, but it kind of gets to what the party or the commenter was saying. So this is just, I'm setting a scene. The players are off on a new saga. Their last quest has ended, and there's no exposition. They don't know where they're going to be. And so it just starts like this. Torches flare murkily here in the revels of the mall, the central ward of the Bashard town of Zareth Ka, where thieves of the east hold carnival by night. In the mall, men can carouse and roar as they like, for honest people shun the quarters, and watchmen, well paid with stained coins, do not interfere with their sport. Along the crooked, unpaved streets, with their heaps of refuse and sloppy puddles, drunken roisters stagger, roaring. Steel glints in the shadows where wolf preys on wolf, and from the darkness rise the shrill laughter of women and the sounds of scuffling and struggling. None of that is a brochure for the city. I mean, maybe it is, but it gives you just as much as like what people are doing in the city. Again, not something that the characters would directly experience, but something that is like just in the zeitgeist, and so they kind of feel it and they understand it. But yeah, I think the in media res is probably just as good of a technique as setting the stage like that. It depends on how important action is to your one shot, and how important mood and theme and motif and atmosphere are. You're running a one shot like Death House, Curse of Strahd. You want to start with mood and atmosphere and motif. If you're running something that's much more action oriented, then start with something in media res.
Ooh, I like this one. This one comes from Durrell.
Dural.
Hit them with something simple like the sea breeze carries the scent of salt and smoke as the city wakes. What are you doing here? And let the player fill in the blanks. That's kind of a cool
Again,
idea.
that's great if you have creative players, but if
Yeah.
it's your first time running the game and you have players that are just kind of sitting there waiting to have, it's funny because if you have players that are sitting there waiting to have stuff downloaded into their head, don't don't do that. Start in media res. And if you have players that are chomping at the bit to get some action going, then start with a more protracted description. And if they're particularly autonomous, then you start with something like, you know, you wake up on the shore like or on the docks from a drunken night of revelry. You can hardly remember why you're here. Like,
Yeah.
and you go, okay, like why are they here? You know, and it's that's for like that's for high level creative players
Yeah.
that will make their own fun and are highly autonomous. And if they're not that way and they're just kind of sitting there, they'll feel paralyzed by
Yeah.
that. They're like, oh, I
Again,
don't know
I
why.
don't think, yeah, not a good thing for a one shot. I don't think.
If you're running a one shot with a bunch of players that run a lot of one shots and play in more protracted campaigns, can be. But if a player is inclined to sit there and wait for you to tell them what they should be doing or how they should be thinking, throw them in the deep end of the pool and have them do something.
Yeah.
And if the players are chomping at the bit to do something, then like they know what's coming. They know that there's going to be some action, and maybe I can give them a little bit of exposition here and kind of draw that out a little bit. And then when they do get to the action, they'll be really eager for it and excited. And so you kind of want to subvert expectations there.
Yeah. This one here, from Crafty Base 6674. This is another example of something I'd say if it's a one shot, probably not worth it unless you know that the everything in the one shot isn't going to take very long, or if you have a lot of time to play. A lot of times when it comes to one shots, you have like again, like many times these days, 4 or 5 hours to play. One shot should be done in one session. It is a one shot. But Crafty Base here says, this is where we are. This is what it's called. This is what it looks like, sounds and smells like. Then we're going to start with a player. We're starting with X player. X player, can you describe what your character looks like? My character looks like this, and their name is this. What would you be doing right now in the city? I would be doing this thing. What does that look like? It looks like this. Well, there's another stranger nearby who seems to be approaching you for X reason. Second player, can you describe your character? You'll start to find your rhythm after the players are involved. It's it's a kind of a good idea. This is if like they created their characters for a one
Yeah.
shot. Again, 8 out of 10 times you're going to be playing with pre-gens. I don't know if it's really necessary. And again, it's just a one shot. We're not trying to get too into our characters right now.
Yeah, and that tactic is a good one to get the players involved, but what it does not do is set the stage that you are the storyteller of the game.
Right.
Like, and you need to set that tenor very quickly. That's the reason that I like kind of the flavor text at the beginning, because it sets the stage for that I am telling a story and then I'm involving you in it. And so, and even with the in media res, it's like you've plopped the characters down in the middle of a story that's already happening. And that very overtly like gives them agency and sets the stage that you're in control of the story. And so you want to be able to balance player agency and involvement with making them very aware that you are running the game. If you give players too much freedom and in like a one shot or something, they just won't know what to do because they won't have an idea of like why they're here, what they're
Yeah.
doing, why the adventure matters, or even like they don't even know like you're like, oh, okay, you're on these docks, and they're like, well, I mean, what do the docks look like? What's next to the docks? What can I do? Where can I go? They're not likely to take the reins and be like, oh, I walk over to this ship that's been there for a couple of days and I've noticed people coming and going off of. They're not going to take the reins of the adventure like that if they're wise players.
Yeah.
Like, and so I don't know that I necessarily agree with that tactic. I mean, it gets everybody kind of talking and involved, but it doesn't start with any dramatic stakes. It doesn't start with any moments of tension. It doesn't start with
Mhm.
any vivid description. So I don't know that it's really all that useful.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I think that's going to bring us to the end of this one, unless you got anything to end on there, David.
No, we had a lot for this one, I think.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, then I think we're just going to leave this off with a good night.
And good luck.